As usual, I mean, I have had the pleasure of actually being around you physically, and you are one of those, at least to me, rare individuals who actually exudes nonverbal positivity and nonverbal optimism and a positive just um I feel happy being in your presence. And even though we're thousands of miles away right now, it's not just your words that are making me feel a certain way, right? So I completely understand the nonverbal communication aspect of it. I think where language becomes important is when you are not already connected to that person, right? And that's when, and I think you were saying this in a different way, but that's when we have to choose our words correctly, and that's where the absence of
Yeah.
words that encapsulate what we're trying to convey, maybe in a nonverbal or in another way, um, can be a problem. It can be a challenge, especially if you're trying to convey a concept to someone who is not yet familiar with that concept. And this, I think this is a discussion for another day, but some words even have, I think I will use the word power, have certain powers over other people, whether you intend them to have those powers or not, because it can trigger all types of ancestral trauma or other types of memories that are either yours or learned, and just connotations and denotations that you're taught in school or by your society or by the media. So words are very important in situations where you don't already feel connected to this person and you can't miss, and you're not likely to misinterpret what that person is saying to you. And this
Yes, and
is, I think it's fabulous that you have started this resonance project. I wanted to go into so many other things today, but hopefully we'll have another conversation soon.
but
Um,
very quickly, Kakoli, on that, when people don't know each other, and that's why coming back into community and getting to know each other at that level of trust, collaboration, unmasking, trauma healing, all that is so, so important. And within the Global Ecovillage Network, intentional communities, other projects, that's why tools like, say, nonviolent communication, right? There's a standardized tool to use, or there's Theory U, where Otto Sharma urges us to say, uh, be very cautious of how you're listening, right? Because you're listening, either he has these 4 parameters. And how can you come into generative listening instead of listening from the past, where you're just downloading not just things, but also trauma? And then how are you, sometimes you're just listening from a place where you just want to respond. So to come to this emptiness where you know you're calling in the future. So there are lots of tools, I think, that can bring strangers into communion, but there has to be a personal readiness and a personal need to do that. And I feel in the regeneration movement in Gen, we have recognized that when a person is ready, they will come to it. And till then, we just stay within this mycelium that's already thriving and nourishing. And there are these people at the periphery who will keep connecting their network. And
I don't
slowly,
want to end on a negative note, but just because you said it though, some
mm,
people are causing immense suffering in the world
mhm,
to
yeah,
our ecologies, to other humans. And many of those people are not ready and probably will not be ready in their lifetime. So I at least feel a responsibility to try to reduce the suffering that other people feel. And yes, we can do it by connecting with other people who are regenerative like we are. But
mhm,
how does one reach the people who are causing such suffering on such immense scales? Because they are not ready to listen and
yes,
they are not
yes.
ready to join communities.
So I think there are different ways of looking at this. One is for me, but I will just speak for myself today. How do I respond to something like this when I'm overwhelmed by suffering? So one is I go into my spiritual practices and my healing practices, and I do the channel the healing that's needed, right? To reduce the suffering or to bring more compassion. And there are different ways of doing it depending on which lineage you're initiated into. But say on a more physical level, I've come to recognize in myself, Kakoli, what is my 5 to 10% to do in the world. I'm an individual, a personality with a body, mind, skill sets. And in my given sphere or my network, what's possible from the way that I can keep regenerating, because we've seen in our movement a lot of activism has led to burnout. A lot of things lead to people suffering more. So even the people wanting to end suffering end up suffering, right? So we have to find processes, pathways, higher consciousness of this path of peace, where we know that if we sit in silence and we pray, say things are moving. But just because we can't see it with our five senses doesn't mean there's no change happening. And sometimes change is slow. So I think just coming back to the self and the feeling of pain when we see another person in pain, or the destruction that's happening, or the extractive nature of our world today. For me, I have found, I would say, an end to it or a relief to it in from moving from suffering, because suffering is the small self, the limited self, to a more expanded self, which is a spiritual self, knowing that everything is always changing, right? So wherever you are, I feel if there is suffering in the immediate environment, if somebody is suffering personally, you can go and offer help if capacity is there. If you're seeing injustice being done locally, and if you have the fearlessness, you can engage there. And I think that's why the work that you're doing, to connect people, to awaken them, to say that a change is possible in the material space if we come together and share our stories, how we've transcended suffering, whether it's ecological suffering, whether it's, social injustice, which is a suffering, which is just maybe women's rights, whatever is active. So I feel in that space, community is really the medicine. And community can be these 3 people, these 5 people, these 10 people. At least you move from this isolation of the single self, that what can I do? I'm helpless, to 3 people who are already a community, and thinking and imagining how can we support. That's already support, the process of thinking. And as energies become stronger and people come together and emergence happens, then maybe you'll see things happening in the real world. But to finally think that in your lifetime, Kakuli, in my lifetime, we can change and have zero suffering, in systems, I'm not sure about, but within ourselves, I'm convinced, right? That peace is achievable in every breath. It's only a breath and a heartbeat away. It's a thought away. It's an imagination away. And the more we practice that every day, we will be able to become become those islands ourselves as single beings. And then just if you go to a place where you see suffering and you're there as this island of healing, an island of peace and coherence, something shifted. And just to be satisfied and grateful for that is important. While we do the external work in the world and while we engage in mainstream, but I feel we have to really conserve our resources, our inner resource, right? The energy that's given to us, use it in a really good way, and which can have an impact on well-being. Because I feel that's where the impact is needed, is on human well-being right now.